I don't know if you can hear the rain outside, but it's raining pretty good out there, and it is some big, cold, wet raindrops. So I'm really glad that Aaron and I managed to get the planks scarfed up and in the glue boxes before the rain hit. So they're all buttoned up and cooking away. And there's not a heck of a lot for us to do right now in terms of making progress on getting the hull planked that doesn't involve being outside in this weather. And neither of us are really feeling that today. And it doesn't make a ton of sense anyways, because the planks that are in there have got to cook for 24 hours. Tomorrow's supposed to be nice weather, so we can go out tomorrow and work on milling up the next round of stock, and we should have it just about ready to go in the boxes by the time that plank's ready to come out. So it gives us a little bit of a lazy afternoon today, which is nice to take every once in a while. Aaron's working on getting some tools sharpened up so that we don't have to share the tools quite so much. And I'm going to start roughing out some stock for the Deadeyes. So these are some chunks of live oak that we've got given. And they've been cut for several years, and they've been kicking around our shop for a year now. And Deadeyes are one of the things that we are hoping to get out of them. So what Deadeyes are is they connect the shrouds to the hull of the boat. And there's 2 of them per shroud, and they basically make a very, very simple block and tackle, for lack of a better phrase for it. So when you need to tension the rig, either tighten it or loosen it, you can just go over and untie a line and yard on those and cinch it up, loosen it. It's kind of an old school way of doing it. So the gaff rig calls for Deadeyes that are 3.5 inches in diameter. And what I'm going to do is take these chunks of live oak here, probably these 2 smaller ones to start with, throw them through the thickness planer and get down to some clean wood and see kind of what the grain looks like. One of the nice things about live oak is it's really twisted, really interlocked grain. So for something like Deadeyes that are under a lot of force and exposed to the weather, they really don't want to split. And live oak is incredibly rot resistant. So these should be pretty ideal for that. Lignum vitae is really the holy grail, but super expensive and kind of a waste to use such stock just for Deadeyes. If we didn't have the live oak, we would do them out of the locust, and if we didn't have the locust, a gnarly chunk of white oak would probably suffice for quite a long time. All right. So there's some beautiful live oak out of the planer. Now the Deadeyes are supposed to finish 3.5 inches in diameter. So we're gonna mark these out, let's say 4 inches for now, and we can cut them down later. Alright, so the live oak blocks for Deadeyes and the Samson posts there all have a nice fresh coat of linseed oil on them. And we're just going to leave these here for the next few days. I mean, it's going to take a couple days for the linseed oil to dry on its own. And then when it does, we'll give them another coat. And at some point here, we'll throw a thin blade on the bandsaw and just cut them out to close to their final diameter. And then oil them again, let them sit for a while. And then we will chuck them onto the lathe and finish shaping them. But we don't need these for quite a while. But it's good to get the process started, getting them knocked down to size, seeing how they behave. And that way, if we can do it really nice and slow over a long period of time, we will be sure that they'll behave when we put them into the boat. Because if we took that big timber and knocked them right down and installed them, we might have some issues. I don't know if you can tell, but it's lightly snowing right now. So definitely not a warm day. I didn't expect to see these snow flurries. So yesterday we got the first of the new oaks in the heat boxes, and today we're gonna try to fire up the Alaskan mill and thickness these slabs a little bit. So we got the big thicknesser, and yesterday, or not yesterday, the day before that, we shoved the big oak slabs through the thicknesser, and that worked really well, but I think the Alaskan mill might be a little bit faster and easier. So we're gonna see if we can get that thing to start up this morning and rip, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch or so off of each of these slabs. And then we'll put them through the big thicknesser. And the hope is to get them scarfed up today so that when the plank in the boxes right now is done cooking this afternoon, we can take that plank out, throw this one right in, and keep on rolling. So I'm gonna fire this hog up and see if we can get these things sliced and diced. Well, this rig ain't cutting too well. I think after doing the oak knees, the blade needs a touch up. She's dull. Yeah. So I'm just gonna hit it real quick with the file and see if I can get it touched up enough that we can run through these 4 oak boards and get to work. It's a bit of a pain to take this all apart and pull the chain off, but I think if we can get it touched up enough, we can run through these. And then in the next few days, one of these evenings, I'll pop it off and give it a sharpen and put it on, and then we'll be good to go for all of the rest of the oak we're gonna have to do this with, because we've got probably 30 or 40 boards that we're gonna have to rip like this. But I think it'll just be faster to give it a quick touch up by hand right now and tear it off later when we've got a little more time to do it. Good job, baby. You've done well. We lost a tooth on the spiral cutter head, so I think the screw walked its way up and it's leaving a track in the plank. So we gotta shut everything down, open it up, see if we can figure out which one it is and cinch it down. Not too big of a deal, but definitely gotta fix it. So Aaron and I made up the two funny oaks. They're definitely the trickiest of the bunch to make. Thankfully, we had some really bomber patterns from the cedar planks that we took off. So we got them glued up and we did the knot repairs in them. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4 knot repairs, which is absolutely nothing compared to what we were doing with the cedar. And these funky planks, they needed some pretty wide stock to be able to get them out of. So dodging knots was really hard. On the next planks, they're going to be a bit narrower and they're going to be straight, so we should be able to dodge the knots a little bit more. But doing 2, 3, 4 knot repairs per plank is really not a big deal at all, and is a far cry from what we were doing with the cedar. We have a lot of nice stock, and some of the nicest stuff we've already used up. But around here in New England, to get long, clear boards that are perfectly clear is a bit tricky to do. It does exist, just not in huge quantities. So dealing with a little bit of knot repair is just part of life, but it's not really a big deal. And like I said, it's nothing compared to what we were doing on the cedars. So now these two oak planks, we've got one here on the starboard and one over on the port there, and they are all glued and scarfed. They are cut down to size. The knot repair is done. So we just got to clean up where we put in the graving pieces. Now what we're going to do is pick up the bevels from our cedar plank here and match them to the oak plank. So we're just going to take the bevel gauge, pick up the bevel, come right below it to the oak plank, and just carve out with the chisel a little bit of a notch so that that bevel gauge sits nicely in there. And then we'll just walk down the plank, and every foot or so we'll do that. And then what that'll give us, it'll give us a whole bunch of little indentations on one side of the plank, because we're not going to touch this upper edge. And then we can stand the plank up on edge, and we can run down it with the hand planes and just take off all the material until we get down to the bottom of every one of those notches. It's kind of like basically kerfing it. And that'll let us pick up these bevels here, transfer them nicely to here, and then we can start to put it onto the boat and see how close we came with this. But this should get us, you know, the lion's share of it. All right, so Aaron and I got our notches cut. So you can see got a fairly deep one here, and a shallower one, and an even shallower one, almost nothing. And so that is where the bevel is changing. So the bevel is more over here, and it's kind of flattening out as we go down this plank. So Aaron's up there at the stem end, and he's hand planing down to the notches that he made there. And I'm gonna do the same thing over here. So might grab the power plane where it's really deep here and just rip this down a little bit, and then switch over to the hand plane. And what we want to do is just plane down until this groove disappears, and we match that angle, and we don't want the pencil line to disappear. So that pencil line there is kind of the sacred mark. So you can see that one's pretty deep, that one's shallower, that one's even more shallow, even more shallow, until we get to the nib where they're almost nothing. And then down most of the midship, they're not too bad. The bevels are pretty tame there right now. Okay, so that's all we're gonna do. I'll smooth this up a little bit more. That is the gist of it. For those of you who are really paying attention, you notice there's a little bit of an ugly knot here right on the edge of the plank, and another little bit of an ugly knot right here. We're gonna leave those for now. And the reason is that this plank is gonna get steamed in on the stern here. So we really don't wanna do glue repairs and then put it in the steam box and get it all super wet and really hot. That would be very bad. But I'm anticipating having to do a little bit more work back here after it's steamed and getting it to settle down. And these knots are right on the edge. So there's a decent chance that we're gonna plane all of them, maybe most of them away. And then we'll see if they're even worth fixing at that point. And if they are, we'll just do a tiny little graving piece on the edge, fair it in, and we'll be good to go. But we don't want to do that until it's all steamed and in place. The rest of the knots we fixed, because we don't anticipate having to steam any of those sections, so we're not worried about it. So at this point, I can still pare with this chisel, but it's seen a bunch of use and it's starting to get a little dull. So believe it or not, at this point, I would consider this chisel to not be as sharp as it should be, but it's still sharp enough to come in and pare oak by hand. So even our dull tools are pretty sharp. If I could go back in time and teach younger Steve how to do one thing, it would be how to sharpen tools. I think that has made the biggest difference of all in my woodworking. Well, that looks pretty good. Alright, nobody breathe on it. Today's kind of a divide and conquer day. So Aaron's working in the boathouse, doing some final smoothing and fitting on the oak plank there so we can start to work on fastening it. And I've been getting the next oak planks prepped. So I dug through the pile, pulled out some likely candidates, and now I'm going to give the chain for the Alaskan mill here some love. Last time we used it, it was a bit dull, and I touched it up real quick with a file, and it was mediocre at best. So I took the chain off, which is a little bit of an adventure. You got to kind of take the whole mill assembly off the saw for the most part. And now I've got it here at the sharpener, and I don't even want to know how many teeth I got to go through. But there are 4 kinds of teeth on this rip chain. So we have 2 30 degrees followed by 2 10 degrees. So basically there's 2 cross-cut teeth, and then there's 2 rip teeth, and then 2 cross-cut teeth and 2 rip teeth all the way around. I did the rakers last time, and they're still pulling some decent sized chips, so I don't think I need to mess with those. I just got to go through and touch up all of these teeth. Okay, so that's 1 round around. Now switch it up to 10 degrees the other way. Rip through the other set of rip teeth, and then we'll set it to 30 and do the right hands of the 30 degrees, and then we'll do the left hands or vice versa. Doesn't really matter, but that's 1 trip around. 3 more to go. We're trying something a little different with this one. Traditionally what we've been doing is fitting the plank amidship and then leaving it clamped and unspringing the stem and the stern and fitting those and then painting the whole thing and putting it on the boat. But as the planks get longer, that gets a little more unwieldy, and with the last one that we did, the cedar on the port side, we were having a little bit of an issue just getting it lined up exactly where it needed to be in the stem for fastening. And we kind of had a little bit of an epiphany and realized that if we fit the middle of the plank and fasten the middle of the plank, we could leave these ends loose and spring them out exactly like we've been doing it. And then all we'll have to do is paint this very end, put it in, and fasten it.